In an unexpected and highly controversial moment that has taken the international stage by storm, a Russian officer reportedly refused to salute Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré during an official event in Moscow. The incident, subtle, yet symbolic, sent immediate ripples across diplomatic circles. But what President Vladimir Putin did in response has left the world utterly stunned. It all began during the recent Africa-Russia summit held in Moscow, a gathering aimed at strengthening ties between the Russian Federation and various African nations. Among the key figures attending was Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young and outspoken leader of Burkina Faso, whose revolutionary rise to power has attracted both admiration and scrutiny on the global stage. As Traoré stepped forward to attend the ceremonial proceedings alongside other dignitaries, cameras captured what appeared to be a tense moment. A Russian officer tasked with handling ceremonial duties conspicuously withheld the traditional salute that is often extended to visiting heads of state. To many observers, it seemed like a slight, one that couldn't be ignored. Speculation surged immediately. Was this a simple breach of protocol? Or was it a quiet political statement against Traoré's controversial background or alignment? Whatever the motive, it was not overlooked by President Putin, who was present at the event and noted the unfolding moment with visible attention. According to sources close to the Kremlin, Putin was briefed on the officer's behavior within hours. The Russian president, known for his meticulous control over state ceremonies and diplomatic etiquette, was reportedly furious over what he considered a blatant act of disrespect, not only towards a foreign leader, but also to Russia's diplomatic image. What Putin did next, however, shocked everyone. In an uncharacteristically swift move, the officer was immediately removed from his post and summoned for questioning. But it didn't stop there. Putin personally invited President Traoré to a closed-door meeting at the Kremlin later that day, a gesture rarely extended to visiting leaders unless of high strategic importance. During that meeting, Putin reportedly issued a formal apology on behalf of the Russian Federation, reaffirming Russia's respect for Burkina Faso's sovereignty and for President Traoré's leadership. Kremlin insiders say Putin went as far as calling the officer's action unacceptable and vowed to enforce stricter protocol training for all military personnel involved in diplomatic engagements. But why such a strong reaction? The answer may lie in the broader geopolitical shifts currently underway. Russia has been strategically courting African nations as part of its foreign policy pivot away from the West, especially amid ongoing sanctions and isolation due to the war in Ukraine. For Russia, Africa represents both a political and economic frontier, and losing face before leaders like Traoré could jeopardize years of careful diplomacy. Moreover, Ibrahim Traoré himself has become a rising symbol of anti-colonial sentiment across West Africa. His strong stance against French influence, his Pan-African rhetoric, and his pivot towards alliances with non-Western powers have made him a popular figure in African political discourse. To disrespect him publicly could alienate not only Burkina Faso, but a wider audience of African nations observing Russia's conduct. Social media exploded with reactions. Supporters of Traoré viewed Putin's swift response as a rare moment of accountability and respect, while critics questioned whether such a show of diplomacy was merely performative. Some Russian commentators argued that the officer may have had personal or ideological reasons for his actions, while others insisted that military protocol must remain above political sentiment. But beyond the noise, one thing was clear. The incident has highlighted how symbolic gestures, like a simple salute, can carry massive weight in international relations. In a world where diplomacy is often dictated by subtle cues, a refusal to salute is not just an omission, it's a message. And Putin's reaction was equally loud and clear. In Russia, disrespecting an ally, no matter how controversial, will not be tolerated. As for Ibrahim Traoré, he appeared unfazed by the moment. In a statement issued by his delegation, he expressed appreciation for the continued commitment of the Russian Federation to partnership and respect. Whether this incident strengthens or strains the long-term relations between the two nations remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: what started as a minor breach in protocol has become a defining moment in modern diplomacy, one that reminded the world just how powerful gestures can be, especially when the eyes of the world are watching. And with global alliances constantly shifting, every move, every word, and yes, even every salute, counts more than ever. In another surprising development that's captured international headlines, President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso has reportedly initiated confidential talks with Iran regarding a potential military cooperation agreement, an unexpected move that is raising eyebrows in both Washington and Paris. According to credible diplomatic sources, Traoré's government sent a delegation to Tehran in late April for what was described as a technical and security-focused dialogue. Though official confirmation remains limited, insiders suggest the discussions included drone technology transfers, counter-terrorism support, and potential arms shipments. This move, if confirmed, marks a significant pivot for Burkina Faso, a country that has traditionally relied on Western support in its battle against extremist insurgencies in the Sahel. But under Traoré's leadership, there's been a sharp turn away from France and other former colonial powers, and towards what some are calling the new axis of influence, including Russia, China, Turkey, and now possibly Iran. Why Iran? For years, Tehran has sought to extend its geopolitical reach into Africa, often through soft power initiatives, religious networks, and strategic military relationships. A partnership with a military-led government like that of Traoré offers Iran a potential foothold in West Africa, a region where Western influence is rapidly diminishing. But this budding alliance also sends shockwaves through global security circles. U.S. officials have already expressed concern over the growing presence of Iranian-backed technology, especially drones, in volatile regions. If Iranian hardware makes its way into the Sahel, it could change the battlefield dynamic entirely. France, once the dominant power in the region, is reportedly monitoring the situation with deep concern, according to a statement from the French Foreign Ministry. Having already seen its troops and diplomats expelled from several African nations, including Mali and Niger, France now faces the possibility of Iran stepping into the very space it once controlled. For Ibrahim Traoré, this could be a calculated move. He's building a new narrative of African sovereignty, one that rejects old colonial ties and embraces multipolar partnerships. By diversifying Burkina Faso's defense relationships, Traoré is signaling that his country will not be a pawn in global power games, but a player on its own terms. Still, this new direction is not without risk. Western sanctions could be triggered if any military hardware from Iran violates international arms control agreements. Aid could be frozen, and Burkina Faso could find itself increasingly isolated from institutions like the IMF and World Bank, where Western influence remains strong. Yet, in Traoré's view, the cost may be worth it. He's betting on a future where Africa is no longer dependent but decisive, where regional leaders form coalitions based on interest, not inheritance. The world is watching closely. What was once seen as a forgotten front in international affairs is now the center of a new strategic chessboard, and as countries like Burkina Faso realign themselves with non-traditional partners, global powers must rethink their approach to influence, cooperation, and diplomacy in the 21st century. In the end, it's more than just alliances. It's a transformation of global order, and Ibrahim Traoré is proving to be one of its most unexpected architects. Just days after the controversial salute incident in Moscow and the covert diplomatic outreach to Iran, Ibrahim Traoré once again made headlines, this time by proposing a bold and historic initiative that could permanently alter the political map of West Africa, the formation of a Sahel confederation. During a closed-door summit held in Ouagadougou with military leaders from Mali and Niger, Traoré reportedly proposed a formal framework to unite the three military-led nations under a single regional bloc, militarily, economically, and diplomatically. The concept, dubbed the Confederation of Sahel Sovereignties, or CSS, is being described as the most radical anti-Western coalition to emerge in Africa since the fall of colonial rule. Sources close to the summit revealed that discussions focused on creating a joint currency, integrated defense systems, and a shared foreign policy stance, especially toward Western powers, the United Nations, and ECOWAS, the West African regional bloc that has frequently clashed with these transitional governments. What's most striking is that this confederation would formalize a path of total independence from French and American influence. All three countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, have expelled French military forces, accused foreign NGOs of espionage, and withdrawn from ECOWAS in defiance of what they view as external meddling. In a leaked segment of Traoré's speech, during the summit he stated, "We are not anti-West, we are pro-dignity. The time of puppets is over. The Sahel will rise together, or not at all." The declaration was met with applause from fellow leaders Colonel Assimi Goïta of Mali and General Abdourahmane Chiani of Niger, both of whom share Traoré's nationalist rhetoric and revolutionary background. While some observers dismissed the Confederation idea as political theater, others are not so sure. With shared military structures already in place, like the joint task forces combating insurgents along their borders, and growing support from foreign powers like Russia and Turkey, the CSS could quickly evolve from proposal to reality. But the potential consequences are enormous. If the Sahel Confederation goes forward, it would mean the emergence of a new regional power bloc, completely detached from the Francophone legacy and aligned instead with a multipolar vision of the world. It would likely result in punitive sanctions from ECOWAS, possible border closures, and even military threats from opposing factions within the African Union. The United States has already expressed alarm over the developments. A spokesperson from the State Department said the U.S. is closely monitoring actions that threaten regional integration and democratic governance, signaling that aid programs may be reviewed or withdrawn. France, predictably, is deeply concerned. The French press has framed the CSS idea as the beginning of the final rupture between Paris and its former colonies. French businesses, already facing hostility and forced exits, now see the entire Sahel as increasingly inaccessible. Meanwhile, African public opinion is divided. While many across the continent, particularly youth, view the Confederation as a courageous stand for sovereignty and unity, others worry about the risks of further militarization, isolation, and authoritarianism. Still, there is no denying that Traoré has captured the imagination of many. His charisma, radical ideas, and refusal to conform to the traditional order have made him one of the most talked-about figures in Africa today. Whether you see him as a freedom fighter or a destabilizer, he is undeniably reshaping the story of the continent. With the Africa-Russia summit fresh in memory, the Iran outreach still under diplomatic wraps, and now this confederation proposal on the table, the world is realizing that Ibrahim Traoré isn't just leading a country, he's leading a movement. And in the months to come, we may very well witness the birth of a new alliance, one forged not in Western boardrooms, but in the heat and dust of the Sahel. In yet another unexpected twist, reports have emerged that Ibrahim Traoré has opened secret channels of communication with BRICS leadership, signaling Burkina Faso's intention to formally apply for membership or observer status in the rapidly expanding economic bloc. This development, which has not yet been officially confirmed by BRICS, but has been widely reported by reliable African and Russian media outlets, is sending ripples across global financial and diplomatic arenas. If true, it would mark a monumental shift for Burkina Faso, a low-income landlocked nation, toward aligning with the world's most prominent anti-Western economic coalition. Traoré's rationale appears clear. BRICS, made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now expanded with new members like Egypt, Iran, and Ethiopia, has positioned itself as an alternative to the US-dominated global financial order. With calls to create a BRICS currency and reduce reliance on the US dollar in international trade, the bloc has become a beacon for nations seeking economic sovereignty. According to sources close to the Burkina Faso leadership, Traoré's government has already submitted a confidential pre-application dossier with an emphasis on future resource cooperation, agricultural development aid, and energy partnerships, particularly in mining and renewable energy, sectors in which BRICS nations like China and Russia have shown keen interest. If successful, this would not only provide Burkina Faso access to new development funds, infrastructure investments, and trade routes, but also severely weaken the economic leverage of Western institutions like the IMF and World Bank, which have historically dictated policy through conditional loans and structural adjustments. What's more significant is the timing. Just months after expelling French troops, resisting U.S. pressure over Russian involvement, and proposing the Sahel Confederation, Traoré is now turning Burkina Faso's compass directly toward the global south. China is said to be quietly supportive of the move. Already involved in infrastructure development across Africa through the Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing views Burkina Faso as a strategic entry point into the Sahel, a region rich in minerals and untapped potential. Russia, which has increased its presence in the country through private security firms and bilateral agreements, is also likely to back Traoré's bid. Moscow views the expansion of BRICS as a geopolitical counterweight to NATO and the G7. But Washington and Brussels are watching with concern. One senior European diplomat, speaking under anonymity, stated, "This is not just a diplomatic gesture, it's a declaration of alignment, and it's a very loud one." If Burkina Faso's application proceeds, it may inspire other African nations under populist or military-led governments to follow suit, accelerating a major realignment of power in Africa and beyond. Traoré, for his part, remains characteristically defiant. In a recent speech to university students in Ouagadougou, he declared, "We are not begging for inclusion. We are demanding respect. If the doors of the old world remain closed, we will build new ones with those who treat us as equals." That sentiment is increasingly echoed across parts of Africa, where youth movements, intellectuals, and civil society groups are calling for a shift from dependency to dignity. In the coming months, the world may witness the incredible, a once overlooked West African nation taking a seat, perhaps not yet at the BRICS table but certainly near it, determined to chart its own future.